There is something you need to know, and you may have felt it before, in a hallway, in a dark street, in the quiet corner of your room. That strange moment when you turned around because something inside you whispered, "You're not alone." What you felt wasn't fear. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't the past chasing you. It was something else, something ancient, gentle, and impossibly patient. There is a light that follows people home. Not the light of lamps or windows, but the light that belongs to heaven itself, a presence that walks behind the tired, stands beside the broken, and guards the ones who don't know they're being watched by grace. You didn't notice it at first. How could you? The world taught you to believe in danger, not in protection. It trained your eyes to search for threats, not for angels. But someone has been walking behind you for years, step for step, breath for breath, never leaving, never rushing, never giving up. This isn't about signs or miracles. This is about survival. Because there were nights you shouldn't have made it home. There were days you shouldn't have stood up again. There were moments when darkness was closer than your next breath. And yet someone kept pushing the shadows back. That someone doesn't wear wings or glow in the open. It moves like silence, watches like memory, and waits like mercy. It followed you through fear, through heartbreak, through mistakes you still regret. And tonight, for the first time, you're going to understand what and who has been following you all this time. There was a night, you remember it even if you don't talk about it, when everything inside you felt heavier than your own body. Your mind was loud, your hope was thin, and your heart was tired of pretending it was fine. You weren't looking for God that night. You weren't looking for angels. You were just trying to make it through the next breath. But heaven was looking for you. You didn't see it, but something stepped closer when your strength stepped back. Something holy crossed the distance between your breaking and your becoming. And while you were whispering, "I can't take much more of this," a presence you couldn't name was whispering back, "Then I will stay right here with you." The room didn't change. The darkness didn't disappear, but the weight shifted just enough for you to stand, just enough for you to breathe, just enough for you to survive what should have shattered you. That was not coincidence. That was not luck. That was not your mind calming down. That was the moment the light refused to leave you, the moment heaven decided that no amount of pain would make it step back. You didn't know it then, but the presence behind you drew closer because it sensed danger before you did. It stood guard when your own heart was too broken to defend itself. It stayed awake while you cried yourself to sleep. It watched over you like someone watches over something they refuse to lose. And if you listened carefully, not with your ears, but with the quiet part of your soul, you will feel it even now, a warmth behind your vulnerability, a pulse inside your silence, a shield behind every moment you almost collapsed. That night didn't destroy you because something sacred refused to walk away. And that same light is still following you now. And the answer is simple, but it cuts deep in the most beautiful way, because the light sees something in you that you stopped seeing in yourself. You see your failures, it sees your fight, you see your past, it sees your potential, you see the reasons to walk away, it sees the reason to stay. The light didn't choose you because you were strong. It chose you because you were worth protecting. It didn't choose you because you were holy. It chose you because you were hurting. It didn't choose you because you prayed perfectly. It chose you because it heard the prayers you didn't know how to say out loud. Grace is attracted to honesty, not performance. And even on your worst days, your soul never stopped reaching upward, even when your mind didn't notice. The angels saw it, heaven saw it, the light saw it. There is a softness in you that darkness cannot kill, a tenderness that pain could not erase, a courage that even fear could not silence. You think you've survived by accident. You haven't. You survived because heaven kept stepping between you and everything that wanted to break you. You are followed because you are chosen. You are chosen because you are loved. And you are loved because something in you refuses to stop shining, even when you think your light is gone. That is why the presence didn't leave. That is why the light chose you, and that is why you are still here. There is a path you walked that no one else fully understands. Not your family, not your friends, not even the people who love you the most. Only heaven knows the true weight of what you carried in silence, and that's why the light followed you. Because every step you took, even the ones that felt meaningless, even the ones that felt wrong, even the ones soaked in fear or regret, all of them were watched, measured, and protected. There were moments you turned left when life begged you to turn right. Moments you stayed when you should have walked away. Moments you trusted the wrong people, believed the wrong promises, opened doors that were never meant for your hands. But every time you wandered, the light wandered with you. Every detour you took, it took two. Every valley you collapsed into, it stepped into without hesitation. Every consequence you didn't see coming, it saw long before you did, and positioned itself behind you to soften the blow. You thought you were walking through darkness alone, but behind you, silent, patient, unwavering, was a presence clearing the path you didn't even know was dangerous. It removed things from your way without letting you see what you almost stepped on. It kept people from reaching you who were never meant to touch your life. It blocked doors that would have destroyed your peace. It placed delays that later turned into protection. And if you could see the spiritual footprints behind your own, you would realize something breathtaking. You never walked first. The light always walked before the danger and behind your vulnerability. It filled the gaps. It covered the blind spots. It guarded the moments you didn't know needed guarding. The path you remember as painful heaven remembers as the place where it stood closest to you. That is why you're still standing. That is why you're still breathing. And that is why even now, the light refuses to stop following you. There are wounds you remember, and there are wounds you don't. Not because they didn't hurt, but because heaven stepped in before the damage could reach your soul. You think your story is defined by what you survived. But the truth is deeper, softer, holier. Your story is also shaped by what never reached you. There were words that were meant to break you, but the light intercepted them. There were betrayals that were meant to crush you, but heaven shut the door before the knife could find your back. There were losses that would have destroyed your spirit, but mercy rerouted your life while you thought you were being delayed. You call it luck. Heaven calls it intervention. Some wounds never landed because an unseen presence carried the impact for you, like a shield made of compassion, like an angel made of light, like a love that refuses to watch you bleed alone. There were nights you cried because of the pain you did feel, but if you could see the pain you didn't feel, the danger that never touched you, the darkness that was stopped miles before reaching your steps, you would drop to your knees in disbelief at how protected you've truly been. Heaven saw every hidden wound growing inside you, the fear you hid behind strength, the loneliness you disguised as independence, the exhaustion buried beneath your smile, and every time your heart began to crack, the light pressed its hands against the fracture so it wouldn't break all the way. You survived things you never knew were aimed at you, and the proof is simple. You are still tender, still capable of love, still able to hope, still willing to try again, even after seasons that should have hardened you. That softness inside you is not weakness. It is evidence that the light shielded the parts of you that were too sacred to lose. And that is why the presence behind you has never stopped following your steps. Every person carries a shadow, not the one cast by sunlight, but the one cast by pain. The shadow made of old fears, old memories, old versions of yourself that still try to follow you. And there was a time when that shadow thought it had you. It thought you were alone, unguarded, unprotected, too tired to fight back. It followed you into nights where your thoughts felt heavier than your body. It whispered lies that sounded almost true. It told you the past would repeat, that you weren't strong enough, that you weren't worthy enough, that you weren't loved enough. Shadows grow bold when they think no one else is watching. But this one miscalculated. It mistook your silence for vulnerability. It mistook your tears for surrender. It mistook your loneliness for absence. But you were never alone. The presence behind you, The same light that follows your steps like a guardian stitched into your breath was watching. It saw the shadow approaching long before you ever turned your head. It saw the lies forming long before they reached your thoughts. It saw the fear rising long before you felt it tighten in your chest. And when that shadow got close enough to touch you, the light did something you didn't see, but your spirit felt. It stepped forward. It positioned itself between you and the darkness like a shield made of eternity. And in that moment, the shadow realized something terrifying. You belong to someone stronger, someone brighter, someone who refused to lose you. That shadow has returned many times since, trying to trick you into thinking your protection was temporary. But it always leaves disappointed, because every time it comes near, it finds the same thing waiting behind you: light. And not just any light, the kind that stands guard, the kind that doesn't sleep, the kind that would rather fight darkness itself than let you fall into it. Your shadow thought you were alone. It was wrong. You always had a guardian. You always had a witness. You always had a presence that refused to let the dark define your story. And that presence is still walking behind you now. There are footsteps behind your life that never made a sound, not because they were distant, but because they were divine. Heaven walks quietly when it wants you to grow, but never so far that you walk unprotected. You didn't hear those footsteps when you made the wrong turn, but they followed. You didn't hear them when you trusted someone who betrayed you, but they stepped closer. You didn't hear them when you sat alone in your room trying to understand why your heart hurt, but they surrounded you like a silent circle of light. There are moments you remember clearly, moments you almost did something you would regret, moments you almost said something that would wound you later, moments you almost gave up because you thought no one would notice, but something stopped you. A hesitation, a breath, a sudden thought, maybe not. Those were footsteps. Not yours, the ones behind you. The presence walking your story has always known when to move quietly and when to move close. It knew when to let you learn and when to intervene. It knew when to let you break just enough to grow, but never enough to lose yourself. If you could replay your entire life with spiritual audio turned on, you would hear things that would undo you. You would hear the sound of heaven pacing behind your sadness. You would hear the soft steps of angels walking through rooms you thought were empty. You would hear the rush of wings every time danger came too close. You would hear the whisper of protection in every moment you almost didn't make it. And you would weep, not because of what you lost, but because of what you never knew you were saved from. Your story is not just what you lived, it is what walked beside you, behind you, around you, invisibly, faithfully, endlessly. Those footsteps were never meant to frighten you. They were meant to remind you, you were never the one clearing your own path. Every step you took was watched over by a presence that knew your destination, even when you lost sight of it. And tonight, as you breathe and read these words, that presence is still there, still walking, still guarding, still choosing you with every quiet step. There are tears you cried that no one ever saw. Not because you were hiding, but because the world was too loud to notice a breaking heart. But heaven noticed. Tears are not silent in the spiritual realm. They have weight, they have sound, they have meaning. Every tear you shed in loneliness rang in heaven like a bell. Every tear you shed in confusion pulled angels closer. Every tear you shed in heartbreak shifted the atmosphere around you as if eternity itself leaned in to listen. When you cried alone, you weren't alone. Someone walked beside every tear, someone sacred, someone who sees pain not as weakness but as language. You have cried in dark rooms where no comfort reached you, where your own breath felt heavy, where even your thoughts grew sharp and unkind. But even there, especially there, the light behind you stepped forward and took its place at your side. Heaven does not stand far when a heart breaks. It kneels, it stays, it waits. It turns your tears into prayers when you no longer have the words. There were moments when your tears didn't fall to the ground. They fell into hands you couldn't see, hands that carried them like treasures, Hands that understood every emotion you couldn't speak aloud. Hands that never once grew tired of your sorrow. And here is something you may not have realized until now. You didn't survive your worst nights because you were strong. You survived because heaven walked beside each tear, guarding the fragile part of you that was trying so hard not to disappear. The tears you cried became the seeds of every new beginning you've lived since then, because heaven never wastes tears. It collects them, redeems them, and turns them into the strength that now carries you through storms you thought would drown you. So the next time you cry, don't apologize for it. Tears do not push heaven away. They bring heaven closer. And that same presence that walked beside your tears before is still beside you now. There is a moment in every wounded life where heaven steps forward not just to comfort, but to transform. A moment when the light that followed you stops walking behind you and finally stands in front of you. Not to block your path, but to heal it. You didn't see it happen, but you felt it, that subtle shift inside you, the sudden breath you didn't expect, the tiny spark of strength that returned on a day you thought was lost. That wasn't coincidence. That was intervention. There is a kind of light that refuses to let a soul stay broken. It studies your wounds like a map. It examines every scar with tenderness. It touches the deepest fractures without making them worse. And while the world tells you, move on, get over it, be stronger, in this light whispers, you don't have to rush, I'll rebuild you gently. It doesn't demand that you rise, it rises inside you, piece by piece, layer by layer, until strength returns to the places where pain once lived. There were parts of you that you believed were permanently damaged. Softness that turned into fear, trust that turned into walls, hope that turned into silence. But the light kept working in the background of your soul, mending what you thought was beyond repair. The proof of this is simple. You love differently now, you forgive differently, you endure differently. Your heart, once fragile, now carries a wisdom that only healed wounds can teach. You didn't heal yourself. Healing was done to you. Healing walked behind you, waited beside you, and when the time was right, healing stepped into you. The light refused to leave you broken because brokenness was never meant to be your resting place. It was only the ground where heaven planted the seeds of who you would become next. And those seeds are growing right now, quietly, steadily, beautifully. Because the same presence that followed you through pain is the presence that is now leading you into purpose. There comes a moment, quiet, sacred, almost invisible, when you realize the truth. You never walked home alone. Every street you crossed in fear, every night you survived without knowing how, every fragile breath you took when the world felt too heavy, you were accompanied, not by chance, not by luck, but by a presence that refused to lose you. Heaven didn't just follow you, it walked you home, step after step, night after night, season after season. It walked behind you when you were stumbling, beside you when you were breaking, and ahead of you when you were too tired to see the way forward. You think you survived alone, but look closer, look deeper, look spiritually. There is no version of your story where you were ever abandoned. Heaven has always been closer than your own shadow. It stood guard when darkness circled. It whispered courage into your breathing. It placed light under your footsteps when everything else went dim. And now, as you stand here wiser than your wounds, stronger than your storms, softer than your sorrow, the presence behind you steps forward and speaks, I walked you through the night. Now let me walk you into the light. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of seeing what followed you all along. So if this message found you, let it stay with you. Let it remind you that grace still moves, angels still walk quietly, and heaven still refuses to let a soul wander alone. And if you want to keep walking with heaven close, if you want more films like this one, soft, sacred, healing, then stay with us. Follow divine frequency so the next light meant for your heart doesn't miss you, because heaven is still speaking, and here you'll always hear it.